Throughout the evening, their periodic presence attracted my attention. 2 people occupied one table, and one of them, from time to time, retreated to other tables while the other remained in place, sipping his drink. Interestingly, the tables that the first guy approached were mostly occupied by women. Their brief exchange took place in different ways. Sometimes he left quickly, and sometimes he took out an envelope with documents or photos. I couldn't figure out what exactly. Naturally, I assumed that they were engaged in some kind of sales activity, and I was surprised that the management of the institution did not intervene and did not stop their activities. That evening, I raised this topic with a group of people I was with: Christy, my wife, with whom I lived for 2 years, and our friends Chris and his wife Liz, as well as Heinz and his wife Kim. We speculated a bit about what we thought they might be up to, but in the end, we decided not to dwell on it. About half an hour later, the first guy came to our table. It seemed that he had already approached all the tables, which were mostly occupied by women, and we would finally find out what was going on. He greeted us with a polite "Good evening, guys. How are you doing tonight? What is it?" he asked when our answers, "excellent" and "fine," were mixed into a messy response. With a smile on his face, he looked at each of us and continued his speech, pointing to his friend. He mentioned that he had come to town on business for the weekend and was looking for company for the evening. He asked if any of the ladies at our table would be interested. I was amazed at his audacity. I couldn't believe that he would have the audacity to approach a table where it was clear that each woman was accompanied by a partner and brazenly suggest that they engage in intimate relations with his friend elsewhere. I was on the verge of expressing my true feelings and telling him where he could go when Liz intervened. She asked why any of us needed to participate in such an action. "You see, my friend has an extraordinarily great and skillful talent. I thought some of you might be intrigued enough to experience it firsthand." The girls couldn't help but laugh at him, but he didn't seem to notice their ridicule. Perhaps the constant rejections made him immune to them. It was Kim who took the next action, which probably led to subsequent complications. And how can we be sure of his true capabilities? The man opened the worn envelope he had been using all night and revealed its contents. There were several photographs showing his friend, which clearly indicated that he had not exaggerated his merits. At this point, we guys decided to give the girls the opportunity to have fun and waited until they rejected this creepy man. The girls looked at the photos with visible awe, laughed, and reacted strangely, almost comically. Chris, Heinz, and I found pleasure in watching the girls handle the situation. Then he made an audacious offer. "Well, what do you say, ladies? Anyone interested? You won't be disappointed." Liz and Kim just shook their heads and, laughing, returned the photos to the man, who carefully put them back in the envelope. He seemed ready to move on and try his luck elsewhere when he suddenly stopped and looked at Christy. Perhaps he recognized something in her eyes that he had seen before, and this prompted him to ask the question again. "What about you, young lady? I didn't see you shaking your head." I sat there, feeling both confident and stupid, looking forward to the moment when Christy would put this guy in his place. When she started talking, my attention was divided between her words and watching his reaction. But to my surprise, his reaction was not at all what I expected. Instead of frowning or looking stoic, he grinned broadly and walked over to Christy. It took my brain a moment to figure out what she actually said. She agreed to go with him. By the time I regained my composure, he quickly led her out from behind the table and toward the exit. I wasn't sure if they had a prearranged signal or if the second person just instinctively knew what to do, but he was already making his way to the exit. Our friends looked as stunned as I was and desperately tried to say something to Christy, but there were no words. Despite the shock, I found the strength to act. They were already halfway to the door when I reached out and grabbed Christy's arm tightly, pulling her away from him. Filled with anger and confusion, I turned to him. "What the hell are you doing?" Before I could finish speaking, a hand twice the size of mine, attached to the largest hand I've ever seen, clung to my arm with force. I reluctantly let go of Christy's grip when the bully with the domineering voice towered over us. "I'm sorry, buddy," he said, "but I can't let you treat the ladies like that." I protested, my heart skipping a beat, "But she's my wife. I'm just trying to stop her from leaving with those guys." But his grip on my arm remained unshakable, clearly demonstrating his superiority. I may have been a decent size, but this behemoth looked like an NFL offensive lineman, possessing not only size but also strength. Turning his attention to Christy, he politely addressed her, "Ma'am, are you leaving of your own free will?" She looked at me, muttered something that sounded like an apology, and then confirmed to the bouncer that she had indeed decided to leave of her own accord. He looked back at me, pity in his eyes. "Listen, buddy, I'm sorry about what's going on in your marriage, but it's my responsibility to make sure there's no violence. As long as you're on our territory, I can't let you run into it like that." Still holding me back, he saw Christy stand on tiptoe and whisper something in his ear. A puzzled expression appeared on his face, after which he turned his gaze back to me, leaving me wondering what had happened between them. "Do you really want to go with them?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Christy looked at me, considering her decision, and then turned to the bouncer with renewed confidence. "Yes, I'm sure," she replied decisively. With that, she confidently walked towards the group of guys who were waiting for her at the door, leaving me behind in a panic. I desperately called out to her, begging her to come back, but she remained adamant. I watched helplessly as she joined the two men and walked out the door. Assuming the bouncer would let me go when they were outside, I figured I could follow them and prevent Christy from getting hurt. As soon as the door closed, I tried to free myself from his grip, but realized that he was still holding me tightly in place. Confused and frustrated, I struggled with him, but my efforts were in vain. "What the hell, dude?" I exclaimed, my face showing a mixture of disbelief and anger. "They're not in your territory anymore, so let me go." Despite my futile attempts, I couldn't free myself from his grip. Exhausted, I stopped and stared at him with an expression of resignation on my face. "Listen, friend, I'm really sorry, but she asked me to stay here for a few more minutes so that you couldn't follow them. And technically, the parking lot still belongs to us." When I realized that Christy had voluntarily left with these two guys to engage in sexual intercourse and even asked the bouncer not to let me follow, I lost all desire to fight. Our friends stood and waited for what would happen next, still not believing how the events of the evening unfolded. After a couple of minutes, the bouncer gently released my hand, and I felt the blood rush back to my veins. I just collapsed on the floor, catching a glimpse of the pitying expression on the bouncer's face, after which he turned away and left. There was a silence in the bar that I hadn't noticed while my personal shock was unfolding. When the realization came that the spectacle was over, peripheral conversations gradually resumed. Devastated, I remained sitting on the floor, tears streaming down my face, oblivious to their presence earlier. How could she betray me like that? Am I not enough to make her happy? The answers became painfully clear. No, I was not enough. But in the midst of this realization, I found a glimpse of something empowering. Chris and Heinz held out their hands to me, helped me up, and escorted me back to our table. Kim and Liz tried to comfort my wounded heart from the fact that Christy had abandoned me and from the humiliation I had endured. But when my eyes met Christy's empty chair, determination flared up in me. I threw $40 on the table and turned quickly to leave. "Are you leaving?" Liz intervened. "Of course," I replied decisively. "I have no reason to stay here, and besides, I have things to do." Liz persisted, "But what about when Christy returns? What's the deal? Aren't you going to wait, if only to make sure she's okay?" "No," I said firmly. "But I'm sure she'd be glad if one of you would take her in for the night. It's time for me to leave." As I was leaving, I heard the girls begging the guys to stop me, and they resolutely refused. Given what she had done, I didn't take my eyes off the door so as not to see the pity that everyone in the bar felt for me. Before my overwhelming emotions got the better of me, I got to my car. I felt a rush of dizziness and almost fainted, so I sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes until I came to my senses and drove home. At this time, I was reflecting on how ironically her impulsive nature initially attracted me to her. I was halfway to our apartment when Christy's number appeared on my phone's caller ID. I immediately assumed that she had changed her mind and needed my help, so I answered the phone without any niceties and immediately rushed to help her. But I was wrong. "Where are you, Christy?" "I can pick you up." "Which hotel are you staying at, and what is your room number?" "Henry, honey, if you don't seem to want me to come to your room, let's change the approach. Can you escape? Just tell me the name of the hotel, and I'll pick you up." "Darling, please listen to me. Honey, I'm not leaving. I want to stay here, and I will stay. I just wanted to call and assure you that this decision has nothing to do with you or my love for you. That's what I feel I have to do, and I would appreciate it if you would understand and accept this. Christy, please think again. I have to do this, Henry, but it won't hurt our relationship. It's just a one-time thing, and it's only going to be physical, I promise. At that moment, I felt completely numb. Not only did she dump me in front of our friends and the whole bar, but now she's calling to make fun of me and has the audacity to ask me to put up with it. I couldn't believe that the woman I fell in love with was treating me like this. I realized that there was nothing to fight for, and I told her that I understood everything. But my understanding did not mean at all what she expected. She looked visibly agitated. Thanks a lot, baby. I'll be with you as soon as I'm done, and I promise to spend the rest of my life showing my love for you. The call ended instantly, dispelling the sadness and despair that had gripped me. I put aside for a while the affection I had felt for her before, replacing it with a firm determination to move on. Arriving at my apartment, I unpacked my luggage. We both had our own things left over from our wedding and spread all 3 suitcases on the bed. Our belongings were minimal, reflecting our modest financial situation. My stuff was significantly smaller than Christie's. I assumed that everything would fit into these 3 suitcases, and if not, then I was sure that everything I would have to leave would not be lost. I took my time because I wasn't going to just disappear. In fact, I was anticipating how much pain she would feel when I left the apartment, as I would when she left the bar. In order for me to experience this, she had to be present. 2 suitcases were fully packed, and 1 was partially filled, and I was making progress. As I continued to pack my things, I began to think that maybe I really would have to wait for her. But my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening and closing. It seemed that she noticed the light on, which indicated that I was awake, and called me. Did you have a good time? I replied sarcastically, although it seemed that my tone did not sound as harsh as I wanted. She replied as if she had just returned from a party or something. Oh, my God, what a time I had, she exclaimed. She came into the bedroom, and I looked at her. Her hair and makeup were in disarray, and her clothes looked worn. She looked disheveled, satisfied. Her smile quickly disappeared when she saw me packing. Confused, she asked, "What are you doing, kid?" I replied calmly, "I'm moving in and filing for divorce." When she came up to me, trying to stop my packing, I grabbed her wrist tightly and carefully put them away. That touch reminded me of the bouncer's grip on my arm, which rekindled my anger. I warned her sternly, "Don't touch me." She begged, "But Henry, you knew it was just a one-time attempt, and then I'd be all yours." I answered firmly, "No, I really understood that you intended to enjoy communicating with these men despite my feelings and objections." It became clear that it was useless to discuss this further. "Tell me, did you sleep with both of them, not just with Mr. Big Friend?" She hesitated before admitting, "Yes, I was asleep. It would be unfair to leave Desmond in limbo after he has put in most of the effort." I couldn't resist replying with heavy sarcasm, "Of course, we wouldn't want a jerk who preys on married women to suffer." My disappointment was obvious. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded, "Baby, please don't leave me. I've always had a desire to experience something like this, but before we met, I didn't have such an opportunity. Besides, I've never been intimate with someone who was well off before." When Desmond showed me the picture, my curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't resist trying it. But now that it's over and our paths have crossed, I'm committed to you indefinitely, and I'm ready to do anything to make amends. Let me remind you, Christy, that you are supposed to be exclusively mine forever, as we swore during our wedding a few years ago. Therefore, your promise to become mine again after you broke that commitment doesn't matter at all. And how exactly do we reconcile? Is this the best solution you can offer? Can you really understand how inadequate this situation makes me feel? Still, I'm willing to give you the opportunity. It's enough to tell me the hotel and the number of the room you were brought to, and I'll think about getting over it. At the same time, I can't make any promises. I'm sorry, my love, but I can't fulfill your request." I continued to pack my things. "Take the real copy of your apology, roll it up, and dispose of it as you see fit, darling. I'm begging you. After all, if I reveal their location, you will undoubtedly commit reckless behavior, and I cannot bear the thought of you getting hurt." I ignored her pleas and continued to pack my things, deciding to leave despite her attempts to convince me otherwise. Physically, she no longer tried to hold me back, but her words continued to ring in my mind. She insisted that this affair was insignificant, that it was just a physical need that she had to satisfy, but her love for me remained unshakable. But her arguments fell on deaf ears. When she uttered those infamous words, "It doesn't mean anything," those words struck a chord with me, revealing a side of Christy that I had never seen before. Our intimate moments together were of great importance to me, symbolizing the unique bond we shared. I didn't realize it mattered so little to her, but it was one of the things that made her special in my eyes. As I zipped up my suitcase, I couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment and betrayal. When we exchanged vows, I promised to protect her, and I was going to keep that promise, even if it meant protecting her from herself. I didn't want to let her get hurt unless she was hurting herself, as she seemed to be doing now. "Okay, Christy," I finally replied, and there was a note of resignation and determination in my voice, "but remember, it was your choice." With these words, I made it clear that I could not be persuaded. I'm leaving, and she's going to have to live with the consequences of her actions. I was the only recipient of the privilege to experience your body, and you just gave it to someone else. The worst part is that you decided to do it in the most humiliating way, right in front of our closest friends. I understand, honey, and I'm sorry, but I promise it won't happen again. I lost control of myself for a while, but now I've admitted my mistake and come to terms with it. But what else can we do? What do you mean? What other desires or experiences do you want to experience? One day a threesome, participation in group meetings, engaging in promiscuous intimate relationships, and then on top of that, you go on the offensive at the local college. This is unbelievable, Christy. I can't imagine that you could have done what you did. The whole bar was looking at me with pity and shame, and you left without even looking back at me. At that moment, she was openly sobbing. If I had looked back, I would hardly have been able to finish the job, but I was determined. Please, darling, don't leave me. I love you deeply. If this is your way of showing love, I'm not interested. To be honest, even if you had told me the place, I had already made the decision to leave, Christy. Maybe one day I will find the strength to forgive you, but I will never forget what you did and how it affected me. It took 2 trips, but I managed to load my suitcases into the car and leave. When I returned the second time, Christy was still lying on the floor. She looked up at me when I entered and pleaded weakly, "Please, please don't go, darling, please." Despite everything that had happened, I couldn't get rid of the guilt. When I left, it didn't make me reconsider my decision, but it weighed on me. I woke up in the hotel feeling disoriented. I must have been more exhausted than I realized. The adrenaline had worn off, and I was very tired. When I finally woke up, it was almost noon. Fortunately, I had already paid for 2 days in advance, but I knew that our bank account would not withstand a long stay at the hotel. I needed a place to live, but I found myself in a difficult position because of the remaining 3 months of renting the apartment that Chris and I had rented before. It was clear that the available funds were not enough to cover the costs of a new apartment, and I had to either accept financial difficulties and abandon the current apartment or develop an alternative plan. The reality is that Chris and I had limited assets, mostly consisting of our personal cars, which were still financed. Therefore, the financial benefit of selling them is likely to be negated by outstanding payments. In addition, there was a small amount in our bank account, and of the other assets we had, only purchased furniture, and besides, I didn't like her at all. I had no hatred, rather, I didn't care. Of course, I didn't want to involve our friends in this, but Chris and Heinz were my best friends for many years, even before we all became husbands. Chris and I were the last to join this couples club. I finally turned on my phone and saw a lot of messages from Christy and a few more from friends and their wives, and I didn't really care, but I didn't hate them either. I just didn't have time for them. Mostly my friends advised me not to take any hasty action, but one message from Chris stood out because he offered his help in any way possible. Intrigued, I dialed the number, and Liz answered the call. Liz put forward a proposal: "You can temporarily stay in our guest room, but I won't shield you from Christy." She's constantly pestering everyone for news about you. I'll let her know that you're here and try to convince her that you're okay, but I expect you to at least treat her with respect. I know she made a mistake. It's important to remember that she didn't commit any crimes, so let's keep some perspective, okay? I agreed to her terms and spent the next morning moving out of the hotel and into their spare room. My boss was sympathetic to this and gave me a day off, but on the condition that I compensate him by working late during the week. Such sympathy was to get it over with and take my mind off the events of the weekend. I went to work late. It was almost 10 o'clock when I arrived at Chris and Liz's house. I was exhausted and craved a much-needed rest. Unfortunately, this was not to be. "Christy, why are you here? Didn't you understand that I didn't want to see you when I left?" "I'm sorry, dear, but it's hard for me without you. I can't sleep, and I can't eat. We need to talk and try to sort things out. I've already told you that I'm not interested in settling things." I probably deserve that answer, but please, honey, don't end our relationship just because of one stupid mistake. We love each other, and we can find a way to get through this. I'm at a loss how to make amends, but please give me another opportunity. I gave you this opportunity that night, Christy. I asked about the whereabouts of these men, and you refused to give me this information. The only way I had left was to regain some self-respect, but you robbed me of that chance. At this point, I'm asking you to give me space so I can determine if I still have any feelings for you. Please don't say those words, my love. I was very stupid, okay, insanely stupid. But will one wrong decision overshadow our future together? Wars have been fought over decisions far less stupid than the one you made. And to be honest, I don't think you have the slightest idea of the enormous pain you've caused me. I promised Liz I'd be polite to you, but I'm afraid that ability is worn off. I need you to leave right now." Christy lowered her head and slowly turned to leave. I stayed in the living room, and Liz met her in the kitchen. They hugged and exchanged whispers, after which Christy left, stopping briefly at the door to express her love to me and then disappeared. My strength ran out, and I collapsed on the couch. Liz sat down next to me, and Chris lingered in the doorway of their hallway. I had no idea how long he had been standing there. "You did a great job with it, Henry. Thank you for being so kind. I know it wasn't easy. I didn't deserve this, Liz. I sincerely tried to be a good partner and make her happy. I don't have to endure this suffering." "No, you shouldn't. And although it's primarily her fault, she's also going through her own pain. She never expected you to leave her because of this. What did she expect from me? She foresaw your anger but believed that it would subside over time. She expected you to be furious, and she knew that she had to prove her love by doing everything right, even if it meant constantly making amends to you. She was thinking about how much she could get away with. All this happened after the incident. What did Liz tell you?" "She told me the same thing she told you. She claimed that the temptation to be with a rich man and his impressive physique was too great for her to resist. Her attention was focused solely on this aspect. That's why she needed a bouncer to hold you back. It made me furious. Was that intimacy at least terrible? Do you want me to be honest or tell you what you want to hear? I guess that's a question for a question. It doesn't matter, but Henry, no matter how much she claims that the contact was amazing, she insists that she will never trade what happened between you for this. It was only once, and there won't be anything else. But she betrayed me by choosing this option. At the same time, she did not realize the consequences of her actions. We all have the freedom of choice, and we must accept its results, even if we don't know about them. I agree with you, but later when she thought about her actions more rationally, she still believed that our relationship could overcome this. She believed that if you treat it as something insignificant, as a momentary entertainment that has no deep meaning, then you will get angry, but in the end, you will move on. I hope so too, but Chris and Heinz disagreed with her, saying it was impossible to survive. I guess they were right. They know me well. I can't imagine how to get out of this situation. Her actions were deliberate. She left right in front of my eyes and asked someone to detain me so she could escape. She even called me after that, trying to get my consent. She had many opportunities to understand that I was not satisfied with her choice, but she constantly made choices not in my favor. I understand that it may seem that way, but she was not in that state of mind. It was like she was going through a temporary insanity. Liz, I admire your dedication to her. I understand that you have developed a strong friendship, and I did not expect anything less from you. Henry, you're my friend too, and I know how deeply you care about her. But this situation is not comparable to the times when I played video games all night instead of working on a history essay. We are already adults, and it should be well known that our actions will lead to the result that we are facing now. With my mind, I admit that you are right, but my heart believes that you are perfect for each other and believes that if you could get over it and forgive her, you would find boundless happiness. Maybe you're right, Liz, but most likely, I will constantly worry about what might happen next. I would never feel comfortable going to a club again, fearing that a similar situation would arise since she obviously has a hard time restraining her primal instincts. I refuse to live like this. She made a decision, and now I have to determine what is best for me. I'm sorry, but I'm tired, and I need to rest. The outcome with Christy is easily predictable. Although I recognize her efforts at reconciliation, I still resisted. It was a difficult situation because I still had feelings for her. Divorce is not just the loss of a spouse, it is the loss of all the hopes, dreams, and plans that we built together. We discussed starting a family, raising children, and even the joy of being a grandparent. We also talked about what places we would like to visit and what we would like to do before starting a family, but all these aspirations disappeared when our relationship broke up. None of these dreams seemed achievable anymore, at least for us as a couple. Strangely enough, it was at such moments of reflection that the desire to stay together was strongest. Christy and I have always been in sync when it comes to these aspirations. We complemented each other perfectly, like two halves of a single whole. But despite this deep connection, I couldn't find a way to get over what she did. Eventually, the divorce became official, and 3 months later, Christy asked for a last conversation with me. She made it clear that there were no expectations or demands on her part, it was just a request. Curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her after the hearing. We were given a separate room where we could talk. Henry, I have to apologize because I'm not sure if I've expressed it before, but I'm really sorry. Please understand that my actions did not mean that there was no love in my heart for you. Perhaps our deep affection for each other made me believe that I could do what I did, and everything would remain intact. Anyway, I have to apologize once again and admit that I will regret this for the rest of my days. I also share this remorse, Christy. I regret the day our paths crossed. I regret the moment when I proposed to you. I'm sorry about our wedding day. I'm full of regrets too. I deeply regret that you are still holding on to illusions, completely unaware of the consequences of your actions. It's time for me to move on, but know that I still feel nothing but contempt and disgust for you. I sincerely hope that you will get smart and start making decisions based on rationality and not blindly chasing your desires to experiment. At that moment, I felt a lump in my throat and fell silent. It wasn't so much regret for his decision as regret for everything that had happened. Without saying a word, I left the room, never to talk or touch each other again. And I have to admit, it was a liberating feeling. It took another 3 months before I felt ready to date again. Although I had no intention of looking for a new romantic partner at the moment, I was tired of sitting at home alone. Chris and Heinz sometimes took me on dates with them, sometimes accompanied by Liz and Kim, who not very delicately tried to set me up with their girlfriends. Although I wasn't ready for anything serious yet, I enjoyed chatting and dancing with different women. I allowed myself casual entertainment without obligations, which consisted of just talking and dancing together. I didn't feel the need to monitor my actions or words because I wasn't trying to impress anyone. They were all friendly, but there was no special connection between them, and when the night came to an end, our ties ended. I also started walking alone, sometimes finding solace in my own company. Although there were always a lot of people in the club, none of them bothered me, and I found satisfaction in this. Interestingly, in the very institution where my life underwent significant changes, there was a woman named Tasha whom I had known since high school. She had been working at the same place for quite some time, but she was not there that evening. Well, you know, that very evening before that, we were just acquaintances. But whenever I went to see her alone, we seemed to form a friendship. Tasha expressed a desire to get something more in the future. It was about 10 months after Christy left the bar with these people when I unexpectedly met them again. They returned to the bar, and I couldn't help but assume that they were going to carry out their insidious plan again. Although they were currently sitting and drinking, watching the surroundings, I couldn't help but suspect that they were scouting potential targets. Tasha noticed my gaze directed at Desmond and Richard and asked me what was bothering me. Surprised that she knew their names, I turned to her. "Do you know them?" I asked. Tasha answered confidently, "Of course. They often visit this place." "Do you know them?" I admitted that I did not know them personally but assumed that they were from another city and came here only occasionally on business. Tasha refuted my assumption, saying that they actually work at a supply warehouse in the city center near the freeway. Realizing that they lived here, I asked about their whereabouts, to which Tasha admitted that she did not know for sure, but she assured me that they regularly come here to flirt with women, and from the looks of it, Richard was pretty good looking. I gave her a puzzled look, silently wondering why she felt the need to share such information. Ignoring my reaction, she said she didn't know this place was popular with pickups. I thought about her words, realizing that single women are really rare here. They are actually quite successful, although these meetings usually take place in groups, not alone. But it cannot be said that these men limit themselves exclusively to single women. In fact, it seems to me that they prefer to have relationships that lead to marriage. I deliberately tried to hide my interest, fearing possible consequences if I revealed my true intentions. It seems quite risky. I can't imagine that the husbands concerned are happy with this situation. I doubt very much that they will ever find out about this. These men are not the type to brag, and I don't think wives would willingly disclose such information to them. Well, maybe some people do. I've heard that there are people who like this kind of thing. In general, I think this topic is being hushed up. It doesn't seem to bother you, actually, I remarked. I don't see anything wrong with that. The wife is having fun, but the husband remains in the dark, so it does not concern him. If she was out with friends, she wouldn't stay at home with him anyway, so he didn't lose anything. I assume that these husbands get intimacy classes through guilt, which puts them in a better position. After reflecting on what she had just said, I realized that nothing had happened between us at that moment. If she doesn't mind, then most likely, without hesitation, she will do it herself. It is sad. Tasha kept talking, even though I didn't react. As far as I know, they did it only once with a woman when her husband was in a bar. It caused a lot of trouble and almost led to violence, so they didn't do it anymore. I wasn't here that night, but luckily, Victor was here. I heard that his wife asked him to restrain her husband so that she could leave with the guys. I turned slowly to her. I can only imagine the expression on my face and eyes at that moment. It was obvious that she noticed because she quickly put everything together. Her hand instinctively went to her mouth as a sign of surprise. "Oh, my God, Henry, it was you and Christy, wasn't it? I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I've heard rumors that she's cheating on you, but I didn't even know." She stopped abruptly, seemingly speechless. What else could she say? I got up from behind the bar and headed outside, pulling out my cell phone as I went. I quickly called to begin the necessary actions and then settled down outside to wait. I didn't realize the extent of my desire for revenge until I realized that it was all a deceptive plan. Yes, Christy voluntarily accepted their offer and went with them, and nothing will change that fact, but I think she did it under the impression that it was just a couple of guys looking for a chance meeting. We'll never see them again, and for some reason, this thought brought a sense of relief. I noticed their car in the parking lot, a squat Cadillac with flashy chrome wheels, perfectly fitting into the cliché. I was pretty sure she belonged to them. Knowing that they hadn't started chasing me yet, I decided that I had time before they showed up, unless, of course, they got rich right away. The details of what happened inside the club remained a mystery, but it seemed like an eternity before they finally came out. As they approached, I felt the aura of triumph emanating from them. I correctly identified their wheels, and when they approached the car, I casually leaned against the driver's side door. "Hey, man," Desmond, a clear representative of this dynamic duo, spoke up. "Do you want to take your hands off my car?" I ignored his remark, focusing on the slightly intoxicated girl they had brought inside. Although she could have brought trouble on herself, I couldn't stand the thought of a woman getting hurt, Moreover, I was sure that her husband didn't deserve it either. From the height of my position, I noticed the ring on her finger. In a firm tone, I addressed her directly, leaving no room for ambiguity. My words were very clear. She needed to find an alternative place, perhaps her own home with her husband. After briefly assessing the circumstances, she decided to take my advice. I watched her retreating figure as she ignored Desmond and Richard's opinion and disappeared into the club. The details of her further actions remained unknown to me after she left. The guys looked a little furious. Their anger was directed at me but had not yet translated into action. I was overcome with confusion when they attacked me with questions, demanding to explain why I had so abruptly stopped their meeting. I reminded them that this woman does not belong to any of us. She is married to her husband. All I did was remind her of that. As we looked at each other, a sense of familiarity came over him, and he asked if we had crossed paths before. Indeed, some time has passed, about 10 months. Desmond, despite his flaws, possessed a certain level of intelligence. I could feel him racking his brain until he finally came to a conclusion. He recognized me. Damn it, Richie. Is that woman's husband, the one she ordered the guy to restrain so she could talk to us? So, where is she? I wouldn't mind another meeting with her, and since he ruined our plan, you have to replace him for us, one of the guys exclaimed. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but she lives far away now. As for your question about our relationship, we really broke up. Their insincerity was obvious, and I found their condolences insufficient. Well, since she chose you, I wasn't interested in her coming back. So what's all this about? Are you looking for revenge or some kind of retribution? He asked, curiosity evident in his tone. Do you really believe that you can handle the two of us? They moved towards me, their intentions unequivocal. They may have underestimated me, but I wasn't going to stand up to them alone. Unaware of this, my friends silently crept up from behind, catching them off guard. In an instant, each of my friends grabbed one of them tightly, restraining their movements. Despite their best efforts, Heinz and Rick, two of my loyal comrades, quickly subdued them with their power. In a few moments, both men were on their knees, and their hands were securely tied with ties. Suddenly, their confidence weakened. Listen, kid, we just made an offer, one of them said. It was her choice to accept him. We didn't force her to do anything. It's her own fault. I nodded in agreement. Yes, I was mad at her too, but I've already dealt with her. It doesn't concern me anymore. My anger turned to them and people like them who posed a threat to society. Deciding to put an end to their actions, I said, you guys are a damn plague on society, and I won't let you do that anymore. With the help of my friends, we loaded 2 troublemakers onto the seat of Jed's pickup truck. We tied their legs together and chained them to the side so they couldn't escape. An hour later, we reached a secluded place in the area. Jed's family owned a farm nearby, and he led us down a long, uneven road that led us to a huge grove of trees. Now we were miles away from civilization, hidden from prying eyes. The guys casually pulled our prisoners out of the truck, not caring at all about their welfare. I took great pleasure in watching the fear reflected in their eyes. It was clear that they had no idea that their pursuit of casual intimacy would lead them into such a dangerous situation. Like Christy, they faced unexpected consequences. Keeping a lighthearted tone in my voice, I asked how society could best eradicate their predatory habits while thinking about how best to proceed. I also thought about how to rid the female population of individuals like them. At first, I was inclined to simply deprive them of the opportunity to cause harm by cutting off their dignity and giving them the opportunity to go their own way. When I shared this offer, their scared faces showed their disbelief at the seriousness of my offer. Anticipating their possible reaction, I reasoned that such an act could lead to various complications if they talked about what had happened. After all, it will be difficult for them to avoid mentioning it when seeking medical help, won't it? My friends seemed to unanimously agree with this opinion, although Desmond and Richard remained strangely silent. Then I suggested an alternative option: eliminate them both and get it over with. Desmond seemed even more shocked at the mere thought of such an outcome. A pained expression appeared on Richard's face, as if he would prefer death to a life without his manhood. It is said that the self-esteem of some men depends solely on the size of their masculinity. But seriously, stop it. We just proposed to her, not that we were punished for it. It was just a chance encounter, nothing she hadn't encountered before, is that right, Desmond? I said. You're not helping your situation, I continued. As I said, I've already taken care of her. My attention is focused on you. I'm tired of people like you who think they can lure married women into bed and avoid any consequences just because they asked. It's time to teach you a lesson, and maybe others like you will change their behavior when I make an example of you. I motioned for the rest of the group to retire nearby. Our goal was to intimidate these guys, make them sweat a little. To tell the truth, I am not violent, and although I wanted to harm them, it was not my intention to physically harm them. For about an hour, we put a lot of pressure on them, making them believe that we had reconsidered our decision to harm or injure them. By the time we returned, their desire to fight had decreased significantly. Okay, guys, I announced hesitantly. Under the convincing arguments of my friends, we decided not to take your life or maim you. Thank God, Desmond exclaimed with relief, but there will be consequences. Here's the thing, gentlemen, serious physical consequences await you. Naturally, we will deny our involvement and provide each other with an alibi. But let me make one thing clear, if a policeman even approaches my residence to discuss your situation, my friends will immediately take action, and any of the above options will be carried out. Is that clear? Absolutely, we won't say a word, I assure you, one of them responded. And remember, we will be watching you closely. Thanks to your driver's licenses, we know your addresses and are already aware of your places of work. If any of my many friends catch you behaving like that towards married women again, consider the game over. Feel free to harass single people, but don't approach married women. I assure you, if you comply with this request, you will greatly regret it. Is there anything we can do to avoid exposing ourselves to physical abuse? Is there any possible solution? Desmond asked. At that moment, the mischievous part of my brain came to life, and contrary to common sense, I decided to grant their request. It wasn't a favorable decision, but it was a chance. Of course, Desmond, I have a suggestion, I said. Desmond's face lit up with hope as he believed that this could save him from the promised beatings. All you have to do is fulfill your end of the bargain by doing a certain action with your friend, and then let him do the same to you. Desmond and Richard exchanged glances and then turned their attention back to me. Without hesitation, Desmond asked to begin, and they were immediately subjected to the procedure. We were a group of 10 people who effectively took out their pent-up irritation on them. We carefully avoided life-threatening injuries, at least this experience will remain in their memory for a long time. Then we took them back to the city and left them near the entrance to the hospital. At the same time, we carefully avoided going into the parking lot and into the area of surveillance cameras. The next morning, we got into the news as 2 victims of an unknown attack and probably a botched robbery was interviewed, but the case was hushed up after the guys said that their attackers were not familiar to them, and they believed that everything happened by accident. So a year has passed since that hellish night. I somehow managed not to treat all women with suspicion, but it wasn't easy. I heard that Christy is terminally ill and in a deplorable condition. Apparently, Desmond and Richard gifted her with a venereal disease, and she did not immediately realize it. As a result, the disease developed rapidly, and the situation was neglected. But now she is under the close supervision of doctors and hopes that therapy will give her a chance to recover and live a happy life, which she once threw out of her and my life. Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't have saved the world from these 2 scoundrels on a more permanent basis. I often think about it and sometimes regret the choice I made. In the end, I had to find a new place to hang out. Finally, Tasha began to show more persistence, and my gentle refusals did not have the desired effect. And then I had to tell her that nothing would work out between us because she sees nothing wrong with a wife doing a little something strange behind her husband's back. At the same time, she tried to convince me that she personally wouldn't do that, but I just didn't believe her. I'd rather have a dog than date her. I don't have any plans yet, but eventually, I'll start dating, maybe and maybe not. Sitting in my car parked just a few houses away from mine, I couldn't help but reflect on recent events. I returned from a business trip earlier than planned, as my work ended earlier than expected. While I was sitting and thinking, it became clear that the warning signs that I decided not to pay attention to actually have a certain weight. Story 2. How did I end up in this situation? Let me start from the beginning. My wife, Deborah, and I met as students and decided to tie the knot shortly after graduation. Being 3 years older, I had already established myself and made a career before our marriage. Soon after that, we had children, 3 boys and a girl. When our youngest started going to high school, Deborah made the decision to return to work. We intended to provide financial support for our children's education, regardless of whether they choose a university or a vocational school. It was up to them. Deborah found a job as a secretary at a nearby marketing firm and gradually rose to the position of administrative assistant. Together with several other women in similar positions, they effectively coped with the workload of 2 senior and 3 junior partners of the firm. The other 2 women I met were just as amazing as my wife, but noticeably younger. I met them and the rest of the staff at various social events such as barbecues and Christmas parties. Over time, I noticed that the selfishness necessary for success in marketing is not very conducive to maintaining a stable family life. It became obvious that both the older and younger partners were in a second marriage, and each of them had a new trophy spouse. Unfortunately, their previous affairs and subsequent divorces had damaged their financial stability. It seemed that problems were brewing in paradise for these 2 people. However, despite the possible troubles, nothing catastrophic had happened yet. When our 4th child was born, my wife and I decided that she would have a tubal ligation before being discharged from the hospital. We hoped that this would lead to an increase in our intimate activity, but the reality turned out to be completely different. Taking care of our young children was exhausting for both of us, and the lack of previous intimate experience prevented us from navigating the new stage of our relationship. Although the moments of intimacy decreased during disagreements, we always managed to overcome them. That was about 8 months ago. During our constant conversations, my wife and I touched on a topic that came up every 2 weeks: decreased fertility. I came across intriguing evidence that women often have difficulty conceiving about 10 years before menopause. This led us to believe that hormonal changes during this period could potentially affect our intimate lives as my wife grows up. In addition, we wondered if these changes might also contribute to the phenomenon known as hitting the wall that single women often encounter. I have repeatedly come across this topic while watching videos on MGTOW, Men Going Their Own Way, on YouTube, as I sought to collect news and information from alternative sources rather than relying solely on mainstream media. Shortly after, a video called Revenge on Cheating Wives appeared in my recommendations on YouTube, possibly caused by an algorithm analyzing my interests related to MGTOW. Surprisingly, it turned out to be exactly what I was looking for, with numerous stories taken from Reddit. But the most fascinating stories I came across were clearly fictional, and yet, as I delved into these stories through reading, watching, and listening, I couldn't help but notice disturbing parallels with my own marriage. Being a natural observer of people, I was struck by the coincidence of changes in society since my youth. As I delved into these stories, I learned what the signs of infidelity are and what excuses are commonly used. This new awareness increased my sensitivity to my wife's behavior. During a summer corporate barbecue, I couldn't shake off the unpleasant feelings when I noticed that junior partner George Goebel and senior partner Reed Martin got too close to my wife. Considering that she was currently helping them work on their respective projects, I tried to brush it off, considering that I had too active an imagination. But I made a mental note to collect the contact information of all partners and their spouses in case I needed it in the future. A few weeks later, at a meeting with our friends and neighbors, I couldn't help but notice my wife's special interest in Jim and even Ron. Now I had several more people under suspicion. The contact details of these suspects and their spouses were already stored in my phone. Fortunately, the typical category of suspects, the presence of brothers, turned out to be inapplicable in this case. It is worth noting that my wife is quite sociable and often has lively conversations during such gatherings. Although it could have been completely innocent, I decided to explore the possibilities of hidden cameras and voice-controlled recording devices. Working for a semiconductor company, I naturally showed my geeky tendencies. I decided to handle this task myself rather than hiring a private investigator, as it turned out to be a more economical option. In addition to the existing doorbell camera, I purchased additional cameras to cover the living room and family rooms, as well as the bedrooms that were still in use. One of the bedrooms was turned into my study, and the other served as my wife's room for needlework and sewing. Before the trip, which was a few weeks away, I made sure that all the cameras were working properly. I assigned the desktop in my office as a server for the surveillance system, which I always left on to avoid unnecessary notifications. I have configured the system to suppress alarms unless I specifically request them. Initially, I was not going to actively monitor my wife, but only wanted to get a record for subsequent analysis. It also prevented any notifications from appearing on the screen if my wife was in my office, but other notifications continued to arrive as usual, except for those related to surveillance equipment. A week before the trip, I consulted with a lawyer to discuss possible parameters if such a need arises in the future. We discussed the practical aspects of the situation in case it was needed. The situation was not going well, but I found comfort in the fact that my children no longer lived at home, so I didn't have to worry about alimony. My daughter and the second eldest went to college, and the third boy chose a trade school. The eldest recently started his career. Although he still lived in the same state, he only came home occasionally. This time, I came for a week-long seminar and also planned to solve some problems at a nearby satellite facility, which was within my area of competence. Fortunately, the troubleshooting went smoothly, which allowed me to complete the work a couple of days ahead of schedule. Feeling spontaneous, I decided to surprise my wife and see if we could make the most of my early return. Hope flashed through my mind. I didn't know yet that this surprise would be the beginning of a new chapter in my life. As I drove up to my entrance, I couldn't help but notice a car parked there that didn't belong to either me or my wife. I immediately realized that something was wrong. Maybe there was an unexpected turn in my life, but at the moment, I couldn't afford to dwell on it. I needed to stay focused and calm. Deciding to park in place, I cautiously approached the side door, hoping that it would be quieter there. As I passed an unfamiliar car, I instinctively checked to see if it was locked. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. When I found the registration number in the glove compartment, I realized that the car belonged to Reed Martin. In search of clarification, I dialed Reed's wife's number, and after 3 calls, she answered, introducing herself as a resident of the Martin house. Introducing myself as Roger Stone, the husband of one of the administrators at her husband's firm, I reminded her of our previous meetings at work meetings. Sensing her curiosity, I informed her that I had potentially disturbing news to share. When asking about Reed's whereabouts, she mentioned that he was going to the country club to have a beer and play cards with friends. Spurred on by suspicion, I cautiously asked if she thought he might be cheating on her. After sharing my discovery, I informed her that a black Mercedes S-Class registered in his name was parked in my driveway. Surprised, she expressed her bewilderment as she did not know that my house was connected to the country club. Wanting to confirm my words, she asked for my address, 896, Little Elm Street. I quickly replied. To make her visit easier, she informed me that she was about to get there. With that, we said goodbye, looking forward to our meeting in the near future. I entered the garage unnoticed through the side door. Trying to remain unnoticed, my gaze fell on the gun safe, where I couldn't resist taking a Walther PPK, partly inspired by my addiction to James Bond films. Along with the safe, I took a taser from the charging stand, hoping that it would be enough to complete the task. I entered the house silently, choosing the kitchen as the entry point. As I walked through it, I couldn't help but hear the passionate sounds coming from above. The clothes scattered on the stairs hinted at what was happening. That's when I noticed the wallet still hidden in his jacket pocket. Giving him a little nudge with my foot, I pulled him out, letting him slide under the couch. I admit it was a small act of retribution caused by my anger. Unlocking the front door and not making a sound, I carefully climbed the stairs, heading, as I assumed, to the master bedroom. Was it some kind of perverted tradition or rite of passage? It puzzled me why they always preferred to have their affairs on the marital bed. Taking out my phone, I started recording a video, filming an intimate scene unfolding behind the slightly ajar bedroom door. Their sounds and grunts drowned out any awareness of my presence. It was time to act. Grabbing the taser, I quickly pressed it against his left buttock, causing his muscles to twitch uncontrollably. Unfortunately, during the convulsions, he pressed even harder into my wife. From their connection, she also began to convulse, and when her legs closed, she managed to push him away. I couldn't help but notice his rich anatomy, which made me wince inwardly. Despite the chaos, I was smart enough to call 911 while continuing to record what was happening. 911, what's wrong with you? The operator asked. Hello, this is Roger Stone. I've just returned home and found an intruder who is sexually assaulting my wife. I need the police urgently, I said, my voice full of anguish. Are you in immediate danger? The operator asked, concern in his tone. I managed to neutralize him with a taser, and he lost consciousness. Since he was working with my wife during the incident, she is also unconscious. We need immediate help, I explained desperately. Could you give me your address? Of course, this is 896 Little Elm Street. The door is unlocked, so please come in when you arrive. I've been recording the situation since I entered the bedroom, and I'm ready to share the video with the police when they arrive, I said, hoping that this would help the investigation. There is a patrol car nearby. You should have them in about 12 minutes, the operator assured me, giving me a glimmer of hope in the midst of this terrifying ordeal. Please stay on the line until help arrives, I asked, worried. I watched my wife bleed, realizing the seriousness of the situation. The culprit of this damage looked very impressive, perhaps he caused internal injuries. I quickly requested an ambulance. Yes, sir, we will send help immediately, they assured me. To subdue the attacker, I gave him another electric shock with a stun gun, feeling a sense of satisfaction. About 10 minutes later, I heard the front door open, after which someone carefully descended the stairs and gradually began to climb. Janet Martin suddenly appeared behind me, making me tremble. I couldn't understand why the perpetrator would target an elderly person like my wife, despite her enduring attractiveness. Having signaled Janet to be silent, she noticed my conversation with the rescue service staff. To capture what was happening, I switched the screen to video recording mode. When Janet saw the horrifying sight of her husband and my wife lying unconscious on the floor on the screen, she winced sympathetically. Motioning for her to come over, I whispered, "The police will arrive soon. Could you help them enter the house when they arrive? Also, could you take off the holster with my gun before you go and open the door to the police? Please make the next one put him on the floor behind me." Soon, we heard a car stop in front of the house. She carefully holstered her pistol on the floor and then began to greet the arriving officers. When one of the officers came up behind me, he noticed a gun on the floor. I motioned for him to come closer so that he could observe the situation and also see that I was recording the entire incident. I took a recording device with me in case I needed to protect myself. When he came to his senses after the first collision, I managed to keep him under control by hitting him twice with a taser. When you arrived, I asked the woman who let you in to move it from my belt to the floor. At the moment, he's just moving. I'm considering filing charges of breaking and entering as well as intimate assault. Do you want to talk to the 911 operator? The officer confirmed his understanding and ended the conversation with the 911 operator. Then he read him his rights, handcuffed him, and escorted him to a patrol car. I'm sorry, but watching him being led naked into a patrol car gave me some pleasure. At that time, an officer on the main level was talking to Janet. He came up to me and asked me what charges I had mentioned. But I want to make it clear that he is not welcome in my house and is therefore considered an uninvited guest. In addition, he seemed to be very attracted to my wife, and from the looks of it, she might have experienced some emotional turmoil. The arrival of the ambulance was caused solely by considerations of her well-being. I am now considering whether to drop the charges against him or insist that he publicly admit his affair with my wife. It is worth noting that she has been absent since I encountered him, so it is difficult for me to assess her position on this issue. The paramedics arrived, and I told them to go upstairs. Soon after, they returned downstairs with her and put her on a stretcher, preparing to take her to the hospital. I was curious about which hospital she was being taken to, and I wanted to visit her later. He offered to accompany her, but I declined, explaining that I had some business to attend to. I believe in doctors, and my wife seems to be sane enough to make most decisions on her own. The paramedics left with her. As they were leaving, I turned to Janet and asked if she was okay. Her answer was, "No, I can handle it," she said, and asked, "How do you manage to stay calm?" I have decided to postpone mourning for now. After all, if I let my emotions consume me at this moment, my family will suffer the consequences. I must remain calm until I fully assess the state of my relationship with my wife. You being his second wife because of his infidelity probably signed a prenuptial agreement. Does his infidelity benefit you in any way? Strangely enough, yes. I had my suspicions about the others, but I didn't have enough evidence. Thanks to your intervention in the situation, there is now a public report. I am grateful to you for that. Perhaps new revelations await us. I strategically installed audio and video surveillance throughout the house. Your husband wasn't the only one who aroused my suspicions. If you need any additional help, please let me know. Thank you for staying in touch. As a sign of my disgust, I kicked his wallet under the couch. I'll get it for you along with his clothes. With these words, she packed up his things, taking several photos of clothes scattered on the floor and how he was being taken out of the house without clothes. Then she got into the car and drove away. I decided to have a light dinner and then make an appropriate conclusion with the video recordings from the surveillance system. The next morning, after finding out that Reed had been there only 2 more times and no one else, I organized the relevant videos and saved them on my phone and several flash drives. After that, I went to the hospital to visit my wife. I called Janet and asked if she would like to meet me at the hospital. Janet agreed. Why didn't you go to the hospital with me? I'm your wife. Think about the situation in which I found you, and if you remember, your question will be answered anyway. What did the doctors find out? My cervix has suffered significant damage, which makes it impossible to conceive. Fortunately, my tubes are already tied. Janet has a few questions for you. How long have you been dating him? I assure you, this was our first meeting. Please try again. I stress that honesty is extremely important for our relationship to have at least some chance of survival. Well, they lasted 2 months, about 10 times. The last 3 meetings took place in our own home. He expressed a strong desire to have an intimate relationship in our marital bed. I can confirm 3 incidents that occurred in our house. How did this happen? Well, that's something you don't need to know right now. Now, because it's based on the principle of necessity and trust. But let me explain how it all started. When our youngest child was preparing to leave for college, I began to feel that I was getting old. People around me started complimenting me, which fueled my desire for attention. In order not to miss the compliments and attention, I started flirting a little with others. I admit I crossed the line with Reed and George at work, as well as with our friends Jim and Ron. Now, you may be wondering how I found out about this. To tell the truth, I had lunch with each of them several times, but it only came to dinners with Reed. It was only 2 months ago that we entered into an intimate relationship. Roger, please understand that my actions have nothing to do with you. It was solely my temporary insanity. Maybe you were right, and that's how I reached my limit. You might also be wondering if there were others he slept with that you know about. Should I talk about it? As I said before, it all comes down to the issue of trust. But I know about 2 other administrators with whom he had a relationship. Sometimes he even got involved with both of them together. Their stories initially made me want to and made me focus on it. They claim that he owns an impressive size and has mastered its use. I serve as proof of its size. Unfortunately, he caused permanent damage to my cervix. Fortunately, I don't need her anymore, but it will be a while before I can try intimacy again. As for his ability to use it, it seems that he relies solely on his size and the anticipation of his partner. Compared to him, you are much more understanding and compassionate. Having experienced both, I am now leaning towards you, although I am not sure that this is still possible. Initially, its size really provided me with intense pleasure and a high frequency of receiving it. He also has decent stamina, but his set of techniques is quite limited, and over time it became painful. In addition, he was inconsiderate in intimate moments. That's why I've been trying to avoid him as much as possible. Lately, by the way, do you happen to know how the other administrators felt when he turned his attention to you? It seems they were somewhat disappointed that he stopped communicating with them. Maybe the 3 of them were doing it to keep him interested. Maybe their young bodies were better adapted to his size and rudeness. Janet was curious as to why he decided to switch to her from younger administrators. According to him, he claimed that he had a stronger emotional connection with Janet compared to others. But on reflection, Janet suspects that he might have been attracted to her simply because she was married, while the others were not. Janet admits Roger's accusations of sexual harassment but doubts that her previous actions will be confirmed in court. She sincerely apologizes for the misunderstandings and regrets that she had unrealistic hopes for a legal outcome. Her initial intention was only to force him to publicly admit his infidelity with other people's spouses, for which she remains grateful. I spoke with my lawyer this morning, and he expressed optimism about the current situation. Roger, could you provide me with a copy of the video you shot that day? A video, Deborah asked, wanting clarification. Janet, this flash drive contains the requested video as well as other videos. Is it possible to refrain from using additional video recordings if they are not absolutely necessary? Video recordings, plural, Deborah asked. Janet replied that she would not use any of them if the court record was enough. Is that okay with you? Yes, Roger, that will be enough. I realized that I made a significant mistake. The doctors told me that I would be discharged in a couple of days. Can I come home? Can I? I said reluctantly, but I don't want to spend the night in our old bedroom. You'll have to spend the night there without me, Janet suddenly said. I have an idea. I agree that you probably won't be able to get a charge of assault of an intimate nature, and even if we had succeeded, we probably wouldn't have been able to get a guilty verdict. What about intimate harassment in the workplace, because all the administrators worked for him? If I persuade the other 2 administrators to join the lawsuit, perhaps we can file a lawsuit against both my future ex-husband and the firm. But before I can focus on this, I need to finalize the divorce. I am aware of my mistakes and am ready to participate in such a trial, as it can help restore lost trust. I asked if Ridout had been released on bail, but so far, this has not happened. I have decided not to post bail on my own, and due to the seriousness of the accusation of intimate assault, the firm also does not want to provide funds. I have already received a restraining order against him in connection with the accusation of intimate assault, so I am grateful to him for that. Janet fulfilled her promise and notified other administrators. As a result, just 2 weeks after the divorce process, a lawsuit was filed to initiate an intimate harassment case. This lawsuit, combined with the emotional shock my wife experienced, complicated the process of dropping the charge of intimate assault. To this was added the charge of breaking and entering. In the end, a compassionate jury decided to find him guilty on all counts. As a result, he received a prison sentence of 7 to 10 years. Janet's divorce was finalized 2 days later, and she got her freedom. However, she did not receive a large sum in the divorce due to the compensation received in the harassment suit. Fortunately, all 3 women received fair compensation, with most of it paid by the company. Surprisingly, they were able to keep their positions at work, and now the number of cases of inappropriate behavior in the office has significantly decreased. Only time will tell how long these positive changes will last. In the meantime, my wife and I continued to live together as neighbors. She readily took responsibility for properly informing the children about the incident. Although the children were furious with their mother at first, I managed to calm them down, and over time, they found a way to reconcile. But the real surprise came from Janet. After settling everything after the divorce, she came over to Deborah and me. Roger, do you finally have the opportunity to mourn what was and what is no longer there? She asked. Yes, mostly, I replied. I'm still struggling with the haunting images of that day. I can only enter the bedroom to do the necessary maintenance work. I can't stay there for long. I am comfortable that Deborah is the mother of my children and a friend, but I'm not sure that I will be able to resume our intimate relationship. Did Deborah see the video you recorded that day? Janet asked. No, I admitted. I wasn't sure how she would react, and when I allowed myself to greet and grieve, those memories became painful. I think she needs to see this. Janet insisted. That day, I fell in love with you, the way you kept your composure and handled the situation despite the pain you were suppressing in yourself. May I have your permission to present it to her if she agrees? I've been avoiding it, but maybe I need to see it to understand Roger's point of view and the problems I've created for him. Join me. I've prepared it on this tablet. A few moments later, Deborah exclaimed, "Oh my God. How did he restrain himself from hurting me or getting into a confrontation when he saw this? I know he keeps guns in a secure garage. Actually, one of them was with him when he started recording. He asked me to put it aside before letting the police in. I believe he wanted to defuse a potentially tense situation and relieve the anxiety that the police might be experiencing. It's incredible to think that I could have lost my life. I can't believe I did something so stupid. Are you interested in watching other videos? Janet asked. No way, Deborah replied. I understand perfectly well how stupid and disrespectful I acted, and I don't want to put myself through even more torment. As for the torment he had to endure all this while facing the threat of divorce, I think it really shows his character that he found the strength to let you come home and live under the same roof. I doubt that there are many men who are able to maintain dignity and commit such acts. In addition, he still expressed a desire to protect you and asked you to delete the videos if they were not necessary. After their return, Deborah confessed, I was the one who was stupid, and it hurt me to watch my own disrespectful behavior towards my husband. At the same time, I felt a newfound admiration for his calm and collected approach to what seemed to be the end of our family. Roger, I sincerely apologize for my actions and am grateful for the forgiveness you have shown so far. Roger, why did you let me come home? I can imagine how painful it was for you, Deborah asked. The situation was incredibly difficult, but it seemed even more unbearable to me to deal with the consequences of leaving you completely. You sincerely apologized and showed genuine remorse. I believe that there was a possibility of reconciliation. The trials allowed me to distract myself and not let myself completely break down, but they also postponed the process of grieving and working through our problems, I explained. We were silent for a while. Finally, Janet spoke. I fell in love with Roger that day, and my admiration and love for him only grew as this ordeal unfolded. If Roger decides to divorce you, I would like to suggest an alternative approach. Throughout this journey, I have sincerely cared for you, Deborah. I have witnessed your efforts to admit your mistakes and restore trust. Realizing how determined and charming my ex can be, I believe that you had little chance against his harassment. Therefore, I suggest the following, Deborah, if you don't mind, I am ready to support Roger in restoring relations with you, even in intimate matters. My feelings for Roger are so strong that I can't imagine myself with anyone else, but I also admire you immensely, and I don't want you to suffer anymore. Janet, I must say that your thinking is truly unique and innovative. On the one hand, I wish everything would be the same with Deborah. I treasured my old life until it fell apart. On the other hand, I deeply respect you, Janet, and the incredible help you provide to everyone except despicable individuals. Besides, you are incredibly attractive. If I ever went through a divorce, I would gladly take the opportunity to be with you, but let me think about it a little bit. A week later, I decided to invite my wife and Janet to dinner at a wonderful restaurant. While we were enjoying a delicious meal and having a pleasant conversation, I made an offer. If you can both convince the children to accept this arrangement and be open to the eccentric Aunt Janet, who is also their father's partner, then I am ready to agree. In response, my wife admitted that if accepting Janet into our family would help repair the damage I had caused, then she would be very happy to pay the price. According to her, Janet and I were connected by mutual sympathy. Continuing the conversation, Janet informed me that Deborah had been tested for sexually transmitted diseases during her hospitalization, which gave me one thought. She handed me an envelope with the test results. Reflecting on the past, we remembered the unpleasant experience that we both had to go through with an excessively large instrument. Janet assured me that most likely everything has returned to a more normal state for both of us. Deborah informed Janet that Roger, was on the larger side of the normal range, which meant I could comfortably accommodate both of them. In addition, Janet informed me that Deborah received permission to resume physical intimacy 3 months ago. This news brought another advantage. We could all move into my fully paid house as part of the settlement. The house had additional bedrooms, an office, a needlework room, and a library. It would allow me to leave my old home and leave memories of what happened many months ago. After answering Janet, I agreed, offering to also persuade the children to join. Surprisingly, they agreed. Perhaps they were tempted by a more spacious and luxurious house in the presence of a swimming pool. They also got to know Janet in the process, as we had collaborated with each other on previous court cases, and obviously, they liked her. A day after we moved in, Janet said to Deborah, "I'm going to be the host," took my hand, and led me into the master bedroom, her room. Since it was so long ago, I didn't stay as long as I would have liked. How long will it take for your body to be able to do this again? I don't know. We've never tried it before. You need to regain your confidence. Surprisingly, it only takes a little more than 15 minutes. On the second attempt, she managed to look into the room before me. By the third attempt, she had already peeked 3 times, and I was still catching up with her. That's what everyone was raving about. After that, we fell asleep in each other's arms. The next evening, Janet took me to the spare bedroom that used to be Deborah's room. Considering that she slept with my ex-husband, it was quite appropriate. After the intimacy, we hugged each other and fell asleep soundly. There was a lot of space in the office, its own bathroom. To my great happiness, neither Janet nor Deborah needed intimacy, and we settled on spending time together about 4 times a week. I was quite capable of it. Also, I was grateful that each session didn't involve multiple attempts. I felt deeply in love with both of them and did not want this relationship to be reduced to animal pleasure. After selling our previous house and putting the proceeds into savings intended for the education of our children, we gathered the whole family during the holidays. It was during this meeting that we joyfully announced the upcoming addition to our family. In the midst of the celebration, Janet, who began to show signs of pregnancy, made profound changes in the lives of 2 people involved in infidelity. Deborah, struggling with self-doubt, sought confirmation outside of our marriage and unfortunately became the victim of a skillful manipulator. To regain some semblance of her former life, she had to put up with the presence of another person in our marital bed, which was a painful compromise. Reed has lost almost everything, including his freedom. As for the spouses who betrayed each other, we managed to keep the family safe and sound, although everything has never been the same. Before, there were nights when I cried myself to sleep in my makeshift study bedroom. In the midst of these difficulties, Janet found solace in the loving and respectful relationships she had developed. Surprisingly, she accepted that Deborah and I had kept in touch. By choosing this path, she was able to avoid the mental anguish associated with the discovery of another affair. When the 3 of us attended social events, I couldn't help but notice that she seemed to like the attention from other couples. It was as if glances and glances fueled a sense of satisfaction in her. Surprisingly, none of the women were worried about me cheating, as I tried my best to keep up in the bedroom. Deborah had been deeply hurt by infidelity in the past, which made her cautious, and Janet's presence served as a constant reminder of the consequences of such actions. But Janet is tired of relationships with men with excessively inflated egos. Instead, she found solace in the idea of becoming part of our extended and somewhat unconventional family, as well as in the prospect of raising her own children in a supportive environment that has already successfully raised 4 adults. It is incredible to think that in just a year, our family has turned from being on the verge of destruction into a prosperous, cohesive, and contented unit. Life is really full of unexpected wonders. Story 3. I have never enjoyed, and will not enjoy, success with women like many boring and not very ambitious bachelors. I had to wait for my chance to be noticed. As soon as more attractive options appear, quiet nerds with a stable income suddenly become attractive to women. My name is Bryce, and I married Naomi 23 years ago. Our first child was born just 6 months later, but the rest of the children were born on a regular 9-month schedule. My eldest daughter, Denise, is currently in college, her brother, Dan, is in his 2nd year, and our youngest, Mickey, is going to private college in the fall. She received a full scholarship, for which I am very grateful. Naomi and I met at a business conference where she was in charge of handing out registration sheets. I must have made a good impression because she found me at lunch and sat down with me. Naomi is distinguished from other people by her considerable weight, however, she doesn't seem to worry and flirts like she's a skinny girl. Her appearance has never mattered to me. We fell in love based on our shared beliefs and aspirations. Naomi works, but only part-time, unlike me. She's a mystery to me. She is smart and attractive but refuses to apply makeup and watch her weight. I try not to get into trouble, but I happen to see her medical certificate, which states that she weighs 240 pounds at a height of 5 feet 4 inches. In this regard, I learned early on never to bring up the topic of her diet or appearance. We have quarrels, but they never affect our intimate life for more than a day or 2. Our intimate life is not particularly exciting. We make love in a missionary style once or twice a week. I've never been interested in Naomi's fantasies, and she's never shown interest in mine. I guess I'm old-fashioned in the sense that I think they're too adventurous. My daughter, Mickey, enlightened me about this when she was in school. "Dad, you're so ignorant," she said. "Sometimes I wish the milkman was my father. Did Mom have lip gloss on when she left for work this morning?" "How should I know?" I replied. "Does she ever wear makeup?" "Not that I know of," Mickey said. "So, you think she doesn't put lip gloss on her lips, and it magically appears?" "Probably not," I admitted. "What are you getting at? Do you think she's applying it for me?" My stomach clenched as I waited for her answer. "Take a walk and see if you can smell the perfume." I was passing by, intending to fill my glass, and, of course, I caught the scent of perfume. I turned to Mickey and noticed, "Probably not for me, right?" "Maybe there's still a glimmer of hope, Dad. This has been going on for several months now. When did she start wearing blouses that accentuate her cleavage? If you check her credit card receipts, you'll probably find a bunch of new clothes. If I were in her place, I would put my finances in order." I kissed Mickey on the forehead and headed to my office. As expected, over the past 3 months, Naomi's purchases at the boutique have grown from $0 to more than $200. I contacted a friend I played golf with on weekends, whose brother was a divorce lawyer. I have worked tirelessly to fund my children's education. If I can find them a job without burdening them with student loans, their chances of making their dreams come true will increase significantly. Thus, my personal fortune does not even reach half a year's salary. If Denise decides to continue her postgraduate studies, it will be another financial blow. Denise, a graduate of my college, is very passionate about Richard Denton, the son of the president of the company where I work. They grew up together, went to the same school and college, and became inseparable. Richard, who is a year older than Denise, now serves as her father's assistant. Denise is a little upset that the topic of marriage is not moving as fast as she had hoped. Given the exorbitant cost of a wedding, you need to be prepared for another financial setback. Daniel thinks he's Romeo, but I haven't seen him with the same girl twice. Mickey is not interested in boys yet. I am spared the nightmares that fathers often experience, fearing the constant procession of boys driven by hormones. I should at least express my gratitude to someone. I remembered the night Mickey noticed the change in Naomi. You imagine the path to a blissful life, but it seems that this joint path has deviated a little from the course. The lawyer advised to prepare 3 documents: a separation agreement, a prenuptial agreement, and a divorce application. He advised her to find the right moment and invite Naomi to make a choice. The purpose of the separation agreement was to freeze assets at that particular moment, not so much to freeze but to determine the value of each of our shares. He offered to immediately transfer everything possible to individual accounts. I wondered if it was worth it. Maybe it's not as terrible as I imagine. I didn't have to think for a long time because Mickey had disappeared somewhere after dinner. Naomi and I retired to the living room to watch TV. I've been thinking about the idea of Botox injections and life post-suction. I couldn't get those words out of my head. What should I think? Is she doing this for me? Wait a minute. I went into my office and took out 3 forms. I signed and dated all 3. "Here, Naomi, this is for you," I said. After a few glances, she exclaimed, "What the hell is this?" In my opinion, everything is obvious. The first contract is a separation agreement, the second is a postnuptial agreement, and the third one is a divorce application. I've already split the savings account. I'll be back at this time tomorrow. If you refuse to sign a separation agreement and a prenuptial agreement, I will file for a legal divorce. It's because I want to spend money. You're crazy if you think I want a divorce or separation. What's his name? Who's his name? What is it? She asked. Him? I replied. The person you started all this for. I'm doing this for myself and for you. Nonsense. You've had 23 years to do this for me. Just 3 months ago, you didn't even think about doing this for yourself. What's his name? She continued. This is nonsense. There is no other man. Do you have a romantic relationship with a woman? No. Then it's a man. What's his name? There is no other man. Do you remember what you were wearing when we went to lunch last Sunday? Not really. Did you wear lipstick and perfume? No. But you come home from work every day with lip gloss and perfume, even though you leave the house without them. Either you tell me his name, or I will cancel the separation agreement and file for divorce tomorrow. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. Bryce, it's not as bad as you think. I think you value your personal life more than mine. Last chance, Naomi. What's his name? Her unhappy expression and tears didn't bother me. I got up to leave. Jim Stevens, I replied in a calm tone. I'll be back tomorrow. Choose which contracts you want to sign. I'm done with you, you lying man. Bryce, please don't say that. I didn't want it to go that far. Please stay. We need to discuss everything. I went to my bedroom and packed my suitcase. Naomi sat in silence, covering her face with her hands. I didn't notice how Mickey hugged and kissed me. I'm proud of you, Dad. If we're not good enough for her, she can live on her own. How could I miss all these signs? It's very simple, Dad. In the college prep classes I attend, we learned about confirmation bias. In essence, this means that you interpret and filter out any information that contradicts your existing beliefs. You believed that mom would never cheat on you, so you ignored or misinterpreted the signs because they didn't match your prejudices. You are far from the first and not the last. They will talk nonsense until they touch the voter. This voter will ignore everything he disagrees with as long as the politician promises something important to him. This is fantastic, Mickey. I'll be back around this time tomorrow, baby. Thank you again. Love you. I love you too, Daddy. Maybe I should have turned off the phone. Maybe I should have left it on. The messages, Bryce, is this prenuptial agreement retroactive? It's not a problem for me, Naomi. Obviously, this is a problem for you. I counted to 3, hung up, and turned off the phone. It wasn't concrete proof yet, but it was definitely hard to fall asleep, remembering her picnics and holiday parties. I couldn't remember Jim Stevens. I was out of town at the last meeting a couple of months ago. There were too many search results on the internet for anything to help. Maybe it wasn't his name at all. Maybe she just made it up to silence me. Fortunately, my workday was busy. I didn't even have time to have lunch. When I finally decided to turn on my phone, I had messages from all 3 children and a good half dozen from Naomi. Mickey informed Daniel and Denise about Naomi. All 3 calls from the children raised my morale. I didn't argue with myself for a long time about what I wanted. What I really wanted was no longer possible. Obviously, I wasn't enough for Naomi. How can I handle this situation psychologically? Is it significant that this is just an emotional betrayal? Will she decide to divorce? Will she take the risk that I won't find out? Why, after the conclusion of the prenuptial agreement, is this problematic? I didn't dare listen to Naomi's messages. The first message came right after I ended the conversation last night. Bryce, this is not a problem for me. I was just reading the contract when you hung up. Please believe me, it's not a problem. I didn't have a sexual relationship with him. I love you. Please call me. An hour later, Bryce, come home, please. I was stupid, but you stopped me from being incredibly stupid. I love you. First thing in the morning, good morning, Bryce. I hope you slept better than I did. I wrote you a letter. It will explain everything. I signed a separation agreement and a retroactive postnuptial agreement. I don't want to get divorced, Bryce. I love you. After about an hour, did you really need to involve the children? We could have handled it calmly. An hour later, I'm really sorry, Bryce. Mickey told me that she was the one who informed you about what I was doing and that she also told Daniel and Denise about it. We can work this out, Bryce. I love you. The shock came at noon, Bryce, I've resigned. I have filed a complaint against Jim Stevens, but I doubt it will have any effect. See you soon. I love you. When I pulled up after work, Naomi's car was the only one. I could smell the lasagna, my favorite, and the dining table had been cleaned. Now there were 2 plates on it, and a candle was burning. I put my things away in the home office and headed to the kitchen to get something to drink. The only time I saw Naomi wearing makeup was on our wedding day. When I had free time, I went to a beauty salon and asked them to do my makeup. "Do you like it? They did a great job on you." "Yes, you look amazing, and I like it. What can I get you to drink?" "The signed papers are on the table. Could you wait to read the letter before eating?" "Of course, I'll wait." The dinner was quiet, delicious, but calm. Then I helped with the cleaning. I moved my things to Denise's old room. "You can have our bedroom. I won't deny you a bed whenever you want. Let me know when you want to talk." Naomi disappeared into Denise's room. I retired to my office. The documents were signed and dated. Our legal separation was official. I can't say that I wanted that. My emotions were at their peak. Will we be able to find happiness after we burst a few wheels? I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and unfolded Naomi's letter. "Bryce, I refuse to go down the beaten track of stamps. I was selfish and on the verge of making a decision that I will regret forever. It all started with the fact that Jim Stevens was hired as a new office manager. He had a convincing charm and lured me into his web with constant flirting. As you know, not many people flirt with me. I found myself basking in his attention. He suggested that I put on lipstick, and I shyly let him choose a color. Soon, he introduced me to my first perfume, which he personally bought for me. We started having lunch together, and I even started a game of bunny slippers with him. I was intoxicated by the attention he gave me. He suggested that I wear more revealing outfits, which I willingly bought for his pleasure. Now comes the most difficult part. 2 weeks ago, when we were returning from lunch, he took my hand and put it on his lap. When we parked, he pulled me to him, and I gave into a kiss. He fondled me, but I pulled away before it went any further. I refused to have lunch with him again that week. I had lunch with him twice last week and again on Monday. We kissed again, and this time, I let him slip his hand under my bra, but it didn't go any further than that. He demanded more from me, but I stood my ground. As you may already know, it was his idea to give me liposuction. I hope you believe me when I say that. It was like that. I really love you, but my actions don't say that. I am so sorry. When you accuse me, I panic. I never thought that I would be so wrong as to lie to you. I believe that I had managed to hide everything from you. My deception may have sealed my fate. I have no one to blame but myself. My actions violate the terms of our post-nuptial agreement, which gives you the right to all the property specified in the document. I'm willing to give up everything if it means I can leave you. If you decide to divorce me, I won't resist. I was stupid, and sometimes stupidity leads to serious consequences. Now I realize, although it's quite late, that you're all my love, Naomi." I sat in the chair for another hour, finding solace only in a drink that helped me fall asleep. The morning brought with it the stunning brightness of the sun. When I picked up the phone, I found messages from all 3 of our children. I answered them all together, telling them that their mother was unfaithful. I'm not sure if what she wrote in the letter is true. We officially split up, but we still live under the same roof. I need time to decide on further actions. I appreciate your support. Without it, it would be incredibly difficult. I love you, Daddy. As soon as I finished dressing, Naomi was already waiting for me in the kitchen. She asked about my schedule for the day, to which I replied that I would avoid her. I've already said that Naomi is smart, and she knew better than to say anything. I ate my breakfast in silence, then picked up my briefcase and headed for the door. Let me know if you need anything, Bryce. The only thing that comes to mind is to take a test for sexually transmitted diseases. Looks like she's not as smart as I thought she was, Bryce. I didn't have any sex with him. You lied at every turn. What makes you think I should believe you? Her defeated expression and quiet tears were replaced by a simple goodbye. I passed the test today. It may have been a waste of money, but if that's what you want, I'll get the results in a few days. I apologize for being rude to you. Think what you want, but I'm going to dinner. Is Mickey here? No, she's avoiding me too. A few days later, Naomi silently handed me a health certificate. I had a very successful interview today. It won't be the same as before, but I'll be working again. Have you thought about how you're going to pay your expenses? Maybe I'll give you the money, and you'll take care of everything. I haven't thought of everything yet. I'll look through my checkbook and calculate the expenses. Will I still be covered by your health insurance, or should I take out my own? I haven't changed anything. Well, not really. I changed the beneficiaries of the children's life insurance. This caused a mist in her eyes and a few tears. Life moved at a slow pace. I still didn't know what I wanted for myself. Naomi was happy at her new job, and the kids were too busy with their own lives to worry about our problems. The days turned into weeks, and at the first opportunity, I made sarcastic remarks. Bryce, what else can I do? If you want to get a divorce, stop procrastinating. This message came less than 3 months after our breakup, when I began to escalate the relationship. The office holiday party was approaching. Although I always visited her because of my position in the top management, this time I decided to take a little revenge on Naomi. When I returned home at the usual hour, I smelled the aroma of freshly baked cookies. I had to change my clothes and get to the hotel in the city center where the celebration was taking place. Hi, dear. How was your working day? As usual, but I'm not staying for dinner today. We have a corporate party. God, what's the dress code this time? Give me a few minutes, and I'll be ready. I'm sorry, Naomi, but I won't take you. I have a date. I need to change my clothes. To tell you the truth, I didn't have a date. I picked up Mickey so she could join the party. I rarely use cologne, but today I decided the event will be held at a hotel in the city center. If I suddenly drink too much or something like that, I'll just get a room. Good night, Naomi. The hurt on Naomi's face was obvious. So be it. Misfortune loves company. Now it was her turn to face emotions she didn't even know she had. Few people asked about Naomi. There were rumors, and everyone knew that something was wrong. I enjoyed the outright flirtation from several unmarried ladies. Spending the night with a charming partner would be very easy. I was wondering if I should go home today. How much pain has been caused already, and will it be enough? Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Mickey got ready to leave. Robin Lowry, a charming 30-year-old girl who survived a divorce, was intoxicated. She works in my department, but she doesn't report directly to me. Bryce, I've rented a room. I could use some help finding her. I caught Robin before she tripped. Mark Franklin, who works under me, supported her from the other side. Robin handed the key to Mickey. Mark and I walked Robin to the elevator. We were already entering the room when she exclaimed, "Oh my God, I feel so bad." We took her to the bathroom. Mickey stayed with her. As soon as the sounds of vomiting subsided, Mickey reappeared. I believe she will survive. Robin came out of the bathroom naked. Where's my bed? I won't try to deny it. I was fascinated by her. Mickey led Robin into the bedroom and gently tucked her in for the night. It was a shame to see the others just standing there and looking at her. I have no idea what you're talking about, Mickey, I said in disbelief. I turned to Mark, hoping to get some clarity. Did you see anything? I asked. Mark shook his head, denying his knowledge. Men can be so ignorant sometimes. We went back to the party, and I went around saying goodbye to everyone. Mickey picked up her purse and sweater, preparing to leave. I asked her to spray perfume on my shirt. She danced with every man who invited her, but I was proud of how deftly she handled inappropriate advances. She reserved slow dancing for the oldest gentleman in the room. When the evening came to an end, I kissed her on the forehead and sent her home. When I arrived at the house, I noticed that the lights were already turned off. I caught movement behind the window curtains, but Naomi didn't greet me. Feeling anxious, I left my clothes in the bathroom and fell asleep soundly. The next morning, when I looked into the bathroom, I found that my clothes were nowhere to be found. After brushing my teeth, I headed to the kitchen. "You've come home," Naomi remarked. "How was the party?" I replied, "Quite typical." She asked how Robin liked it, and I assured her that she had a great time. "Did you kiss her?" "Yes, but no more than that," I admitted. Naomi asked if I minded, and disappointment rose in me. "Damn it, Bryce, it's tearing me apart," she confessed. "I'm sorry, but last night seemed like the longest night of my life." Her reaction was unexpected. "If you're going to divorce me, do it now." "Don't play games," Naomi demanded. I sighed, realizing that the choice wasn't as easy as she thought. "I wish it was that simple, Naomi." "I can't forget the 100 years we spent together," I said. "You could have cheated, you could have had contact, or you might not have. But that doesn't excuse you from breaking our marriage vows," I said. "But you did the same thing last night, so why are you allowed, and I'm not?" she objected, annoyed by the double standards. "Bryce, I want us to get this over with." "I'm afraid you'll find someone better than me," Naomi confessed, her voice filled with fear. Her confession really hurt me. "It scares me too," I admitted. "Welcome to my world." "Now you understand what's going on in my head," I added. "I'm going for a walk," I announced. To my surprise, Naomi decided to join me. It was the first time she joined me on my 2-mile lap, which usually took me about 45 minutes. We walked in silence, and it was strangely comforting. "That was great, Naomi," I said softly. "I'm going to take a shower now. Would you like to join me?" I asked, hoping to bridge the gap between us. To be honest, I think Naomi was checking the tracks. I don't remember a time when she kissed every inch of my body. I don't know how she discovered it, but I should have assumed she would. It didn't take long, just a few days. You must be proud of yourself, right? Take Mickey to your party. Did you claim that you danced all the slow dances with her? No, I said. She danced all the slow dances. You heard what you wanted to hear. Whose fragrance was on your shirt? I asked. Mickey. So you didn't sleep with any other woman that night? Why would I? Admit that some of these young women have an attractive figure, but there was nothing. Naomi's face turned pale, and tears glistened in her eyes. Ignorance is painful, isn't it, Naomi? Let me know when you can get that thought out of your head. Next week or 10 years from now. Into the bedroom. Wow, twice in a week. Get used to it if you want to stay here. Denise is engaged to Richard. At a holiday party, she managed to make him jealous. That's where the savings account came in handy. Naomi received nothing from her previous employer, although Jim Stevens was fired a few months later. Despite the fact that her new job was somewhat different, 6 months later, she was promoted to shift supervisor. She doesn't wear makeup or perfume and only dresses sexier when we go out together. Naomi made me accompany her to her annual checkup. She wanted me to know that the doctor recommends that she lose weight. It was wise of her, as I would have suspected that she suddenly started dieting and exercising. She spends a lot of money on clothes again, but this time because she's shedding extra pounds. All 3 children took turns to stop avoiding Naomi. We became a family again. Eventually, Naomi found out about Robin again through Mickey. Do you ever think about Robin? Only in intimate moments. It's okay if you only think about her in those moments. I know this may seem selfish on my part, but her little affair led to the most satisfying life I've ever experienced.